Okay. Peace and welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Folks, we got a great show for you on this Monday. Happy Monday. First and foremost, let's talk about a new Reuters examination shows that U.S. political leaders have slaveholder ancestors. I'm going to break down some of the data about some of our political leaders and their ties to the transatlantic slave trade. We'll have that conversation. Also, can we talk a little bit about affirmative action, how former Vice President Mike Pence said that affirmative action was only a temporary solution when talking about college admissions. Do you agree, crew? I'm going to get your take on that. Later, we check in with Dr. Bridget, MD, for your Reclaim Your Wellness segment, where she talks about lab-grown meat. Lab-grown meat, folks. Yeah, we'll have that conversation. And I got something for you for Trends, Posts, and Doing the Most. So stay with us. It's all happening on today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. Okay, welcome to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the discussion, folks. We got a lot to talk about, so let's jump right into it. And if you are checking in, make sure you do so. If you want to jump in and be a part of the conversation, this is the only show that on a digital space, folks, where you are actually a part of the discussion. So if you want to join us today, you can do so by checking us out on YouTube as we're streaming right there. Just go under Roland Martin's YouTube page, and you can jump into the chat as we're streaming live right there. But of course, we are streaming live on Black Star Network and on Amazon News if you're checking us out on Roku TV. So we got a lot of ways for you to check out today's fantastic show. All right, big shout out to all of my culture crew that have already started jumping into the chat. I'm so happy to see you, Pauline, Jeffrey. Good afternoon, Deidre. Hey, culture crew. There it is right there. And I want to make sure that I get as many of you to jump into the conversations. All right, folks. Of course, today is the day before Independence Day, so tomorrow we won't have a show. But it got us thinking about history, especially when a couple of weeks ago we were already talking about Juneteenth. But now there is a new Reuters examination. This is the news agencies that has put out a new, I would say, some data about where we are with how far or how close we are to the great experiment, the great horrific tragedy of the transatlantic slave trade. Since, of course, as we're talking about this country's independence, you can't talk about this country's independence without talking about the enslavement of Black people that happened from all around the globe. And we saw the most serious institution of slavery happening here in the United States of America. So you can't celebrate the independence of America without talking about the oppression of a people that have yet to get under the tyranny, the oppression, the knee of this country. So I want to share with you, this came across, and I thought this was interesting. Well, I'm going to get y'all take on this, as there is a new genealogy study that was just recently done to show that U.S. political leaders actually have slaveholder ancestors. And I'm wondering, crew, should we make a big fuss about this? That's the clip from NBC News right there. But should we make a big fuss about this? Should we make a big brouhaha about this? All right, let me share with you what the report says and break down some of the data around this new study. Very, very interesting. All right, let me show you this, folks. Check this out. According to NBC News, they put it out. In researching the genealogies of America's political elite, a Reuters examination found that a fifth of members of Congress, living presidents, Supreme Court justices, and governors are direct descendants of ancestors who enslaved Black people. Among 536 members of the last sitting Congress, for example, Reuters determined at least 100 descend from slave owners. Of that group, more than a quarter of the Senate, 28 members, can trace their families to at least one slaveholder. Among those lawmakers from the 117th Congress are Democrats and Republicans alike. They include some of the most influential politicians in America: Republican Senators Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, and Tom Cotton, and Democrats Elizabeth Warren, Tammy Duckworth, and Jean Shaheen. In addition, Reuters determined that President Joe Biden and every living former U.S. president except Donald Trump, what? Are direct descendants of slaveholders Jimmy Carter, George W. Bush, Bill Clinton, and through his white mother's side, Barack Obama. 2 of the 9 sitting U.S. Supreme Court justices, Amy Coney Barrett and Neil Gorsuch, also have direct ancestors who enslaved people. What? What? That's the situation, folks. What? Can you believe that? I can. When I came across this information, folks, I was a little bit blown. And then I was like, what? Donald Trump doesn't even have any ancestors that is connected to the transatlantic slave trade. However, he got ancestors that deal with other stuff, other wrongs, but not in this case. Isn't that interesting? Well, would you look at that? All right, so here's my question, crew, as we kind of talk about what to do with this information. Should we ask these political leaders, and we know some of them will not even acknowledge this, but should there be some national conversation about this? Should there be some form of repudiation of this? So what do you do with this information now that we know that the genealogy is showing that this is the case, especially for former presidents and for Supreme Court justices? And the question is, I got it for you, crew, is how many of you are really surprised? How many of you are really surprised by this? I want you to join me in the conversation. Join me in the chat. Post your comments as we're streaming live on YouTube under Roland Martin. Go to the chat. Post your thoughts about this. And let me jump right in to hear what do you have to say about this latest situation, this genealogy report that shows that over more than 100 U.S. political leaders, folks, have ties to slaveholder holding ancestries. All right, so let's go to you, Conscious Thought, my brother. You checking in. I appreciate you as always, and you kicking us off this afternoon. You say something. I would be more surprised if there were none. How about that? Who did not have slave owning ancestors? Right. That would be the surprise. That would be the surprise. Conscious Thought, I'm interested, bro. Do you think that there needs to be something said about that from these individuals? You may not get it from Republicans, but do you think Democrats should say, you know what, we do have ties. This is a part of my family, especially a person like a Senator Elizabeth Warren. So progressive, so, she's involved in a lot of national conversations about everything from LGBTQ to women's rights to what's happening with, the state of democracy, to some level of reparations. Should anyone come out and say, say, look, this might be my past, but this doesn't have to be my future. Something, I don't know. Renaissance Rose Conscious, thank you, bro. Renaissance Rose, good to hear from you. Welcome to the crew. You said only surprised about Trump, right? Yeah, that was me. Renaissance Rose, that was me wholeheartedly. Thank you so much for checking in. Jeffrey Bordeaux Sr., you said not at all surprised. Yeah, right. Lindsey Graham, are we really surprised that Lindsey Graham is connected to some ancestors that had slaves? Really? Are we? No, we're not at all. Jeffrey, my God, thank you so much for checking in. Monkey Confessions, you said Obama has not made a comment. I don't know if he will either, Monkey Confessions. Do you think he really will? Should he? That's the question. That's the big question. Should he make a comment? Does that do anything? If America's political leaders say, hey, my family has been involved in this horrific human rights violation, then they should, even though this was a part of my family, this is not where I stand. It would be nice, right? Especially as we're having national conversations about, Black history, democracy, independence, and all of that, especially as the country is going into tomorrow celebrating Independence Day. So wouldn't that be a nice way? How about President Joe Biden? Maybe he should say something. I don't know. So it's interesting. It's very, very interesting. Now, we know Donald Trump's grandfather, he moved to the U.S. from Germany. and apparently in a steamship back in the 1800s, late 1800s. So that is his start to the family there. But it's interesting. Jeffrey Guyat, you said his Trump father's side came from Germany. I believe his grandfather, his mother immigrated from Scotland. Right, absolutely. So I appreciate you for posting that. Let me see here. Sean Gomes, Sean, you checked in and said to reawaken a nation of people, we have to destroy what was gained, blood, sweat, and tears in order to arouse old lions to lift their voice and roar once more. We have to embrace the fall, to receive victory. There it is right there. And of course, Kid Legend 4757, the young man here, he says, we stand for our rights. How about that? We absolutely do. Big shout out to Kid Legend 457. There it is, folks. I think that this is and I'm bringing it to the forefront, just for historical purposes, but for us to look at where we are in this country. We have not fully confronted this thing called racism. This thing, we haven't fully confronted slavery. It's still something that is hidden. It's still something that is, we kind of gloss over. It's still something that we don't mention. And I think you would agree with me on this, crew, just as much as I think this is the truth, that if we don't go full steam ahead to confront this thing, to look at the history, to take the history for what it is, not what we hope to be, what we wish it to be, not one that we want to neglect it to be, but to take history for what it is and say and accept it and say, you know what, this did happen. This part of our history not only happened, my family was involved in it, and then guess what? Start the process to move along. There we go. Let me take another pause. What we want to do is take a quick pause. When we come back, love to get more thoughts about this if you want to share your thoughts. Also, I want to talk about something else as we have this part of the conversation, folks. I want us to talk about affirmative action because the country is still reeling from that major decision that came up from the Supreme Court last week about affirmative action. And I want to kind of get your take because Vice President Mike Pence, who has decided to run for president of the United States in this 2024 election, he said some things about this whole case that I want to get your take on as well, folks. And I think it may not be as clear cut as many people tend to believe. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So stay riding with us. We got a lot to cover today on today's show. I want you to join us in the conversation. Hit us up on YouTube as we are streaming live there under Roland Martin. And continue to join us in the conversation right here on The Culture on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, We're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii. Thank you so much for tuning in. All right, let's talk a little bit about this affirmative action situation. So many of you have been chatting about this. The country is still trying to figure out what to do next or how to really move forward from that historic decision that was made by the Supreme Court last week, where they essentially strike down affirmative action programs at the University of North Carolina and Harvard, setting a new precedent for using race as part of college admissions. And many people have said, some people have said that this is good, and other folks have said this is not so good. Now, I want to share with you what former Vice President Mike Pence had to say about this. Some of you say, why we got to bring up Mike Pence? Because I think he may be sharing the sentiment of individuals who don't really want to say it. He might be saying something that some of us may actually believe. You say, is that possible? Well, sometimes it is. But let me share with you what former Vice President Mike Pence, who's actually running for president in the 2024 election, he said this on CBS's Face the Nation. Take a look at this quote, folks. He said, I really don't believe there is racial inequality in education. He said this on Face the Nation. He said, I believe there was. He said, they may have been a time when affirmative action was necessary simply to open the doors of all of our schools and universities. But I think that time has passed. Now, he is a GOP presidential hopeful, where he cited former Supreme Court Justices Sandra Day O'Connor, who in the ruling in favor of affirmative action in 2003, we're talking 20 years ago, says she expected there to be no need for colleges and universities to use racial preferences and admissions within the next 25 years. The former vice president said that affirmative action was a temporary solution. He said the fact that it has been effectively ended by the Supreme Court ahead of O'Connor's predicted timeline is a, quote, tribute to our nation and a great, great credit to the extraordinary accomplishments that minority students have had on our campuses. Okay, so do you agree? Do you agree with this, folks? All right, let me hear from you, crew, about what's your take on this. Do you agree with former Vice President Mike Pence? He said that affirmative action was only a temporary solution. And I'm wondering, is he correct on this? Is he correct? Now, here's the thing. Since that decision was rendered last week, I've actually seen a number of Black folks, Black activists, community organizers, some Black leaders who said that even though it was not expected to happen, that this was a good thing that it did happen, not because of there's the possibility to continue to get students to go to HBCUs. That's Mike Pence with the fly on his head, as you recall. But it also is a way to wake us up, to not get comfortable with this form of preference. So I've actually started to see a lot more Black folks say that we don't need to have any more leg ups. We don't need to have anyone kind of doing us a favor, quote unquote. And I'm just using that term lightly. But we don't need any special preferences. All we need to do is to either decide whether we're going to continue to be a part of this system, or if we decide that we're going to pull up our bootstraps and essentially go to work and work harder to try to put ourselves in a better condition. So I want to get your take on that, folks. Is Mike Pence on to something? Are some of the minority voices in our community, a part of our culture, are they on to something when they say, affirmative action is not necessary, it's not easy? All right, let me go back to you, what you got to say on this. Pretty Brown Mimi 726, my sister, good to hear from you as always. You said, it's so easy for Mike Pence to say that from his place of white male privilege. Right? Absolutely. Absolutely. That is a huge fact. He's standing in that place. So it's easy for him to say it. There has been, and I'm sure that if y'all haven't watched the Black Table of Dr. Carr, make sure y'all check that out here on the Black Star Network. So he talks about the affirmative action, the bridge, and Brother Roland put this out there. I think it was on either Twitter or Instagram. But he kind of retweeted this post about Clarence Thomas and how Clarence Thomas essentially, who had gained from affirmative action, that was actually something that got him on the high court of the Supreme Court, how he has essentially burned the bridge that had taken him across. So, and then Dr. Carr talks about this thing of Clarence Thomas, of this idea of affirmative action as it relates to his story. So there's some mixed feelings about this. So Pretty Brown Mimi, you're right. It's a white male privilege that is coming out of Mike Pence's mouth. But again, I don't think it's totally outside of what some Black folks in our community that are part of the culture is feeling. Willie Frazier, you said with the percentage of Black students, half of the percentage of the population, it looks like it's still necessary. Here's my question to you, Willie, and I'm glad that you brought this up. My question is, when do we let go, or should we ever let go of affirmative action? Will we always need an extra boost, an extra consideration, an extra preference for college admissions? Will we always need that? Now, as you pointed out, this number with the percentage of Black students, half of the percentage of the population looks like it's still necessary. Do we keep using that preference, or should we keep fighting to have that preference in place to say, okay, let's get another 25% of those students over, and then we can end it there? But it was set up as a temporary solution with about 20, 25 years lifespan. With this new precedent, it cut it down to, as you saw, as I mentioned, Sandra Day O'Connor, when they voted on it back in 2003, it's 2023, you're talking about 20 years. Is that enough? Or do we need another generation of time to really get our foot into the door? Now, here's the other part of this. And Willie and Mimi, I think y'all would agree with me. We can't talk about affirmative action without recognizing that it hasn't always been a clear pathway. You can't keep putting stuff in the way and then say, well, we don't need affirmative action, but yet keep moving the goalposts, making it harder for Black students in particular, for brown students, for them to get to the place that they can get where they can feel like they are able to attain some level of success, some economic and social mobility. You got to move all of the other stuff out of the way too. It can't just be, we want to take down affirmative action and not look at what institutions and other programs have done traditionally to keep Black and brown to keep Native Americans and Asian Americans and folks out of those spaces as well. Dr. Mordecai Cassius Marcellus Jones, you said I was talking to Jesus. What? Wait a minute, hold on. Let me check on this quote real quick, y'all, because I don't even know if I'm going to bring this quote up. All right, we're going to go past that quote. I'm going to go past that quote. Let me say, you don't like my music. You say, if a visible minority achieves the same qualifications as me, they deserve the spot. They likely had to overcome much more than me. Facts. Okay, so you use your personal story on that. Okay, I get it. I totally get it, bro. I definitely get it. I think that is the case. If a visible minority achieves the same qualifications as you did, they deserve the spot. Okay. All right. I like that. Pretty Brown Mimi, you responded to my remarks. You said, Farajii, we can let go of affirmative action when white supremacy lets go. Okay. I think that's a great point. So, meaning you're saying it's not a temporary solution. It is a permanent solution until we get some real change. Okay, I like that. I like the directions that you're going in. Let me see here. Bryce Coley, you checked in and said, we're going back to the 1950s America. That's a good thing. Bryce, what do you mean by that? What do you mean that's a good thing? I really want to know. Please tell me, what do you mean by that's a good thing? Is it good that roadblocks are still being set up? And that's the thing, folks. Roadblocks are still being set up for Black, Brown, Asians, Native American, other students from across the waters. Is that a good thing? If students can't get access to quality education, and I'm talking about students that have been disenfranchised and marginalized. I'm talking about from communities that have been broken apart. I'm talking about from families that haven't had a first generation college student, families that who have contributed, whether they contributed time, their talents, their efforts to making this country as great as it is. But yet you still have people and families who have never been able to achieve higher education. That's a problem. Do you want to go back to that America? Is that the America that you're talking about being a good thing? Because 1950s America was a very racist, segregated, an America that put boundaries on people, an America that really did not show that it was moving forward in the best interest of a growing and diverse population. What are we saying here, Bryce? What are we saying? Ruben Gutierrez, you checked in. You said, my grandmother used to say, if we can't attend, they can't attend, meaning taking apart their institutions. Okay. I like how grandma is thinking. Should we force, here's my other thing on, as Ruben pointed that out. Ruben, my question is, should we continue to fight to be in places where we're not wanted? And I'm talking about in certain colleges, right? Now, I think that after this came down, and I started to see some rumblings, and folks, you might be seeing some rumblings on this as well. And then we're going to take a quick pause. I think that we have seen, I'm starting to see some companies, some schools who are saying that they are not going to follow the Supreme Court's decision. Here in Los Angeles, I've already seen a couple of schools have already put out public statements saying, look, we're not going to follow that. We're going to continue to use race as a part of the college admissions process. We're not going to follow that. Now look at what's happening. And this is how important the Supreme Court is, because as we talked about this last week, when the Supreme Court renders a major judgment, a major decision, it affects all. But what happens when you have institutions that quote unquote rebel against that decision? Then what is really going on? Folks, I got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, more conversation. I want to hear from you. Post your comments on our YouTube page under Roland Martin as we continue to have this conversation. As I'm asking the question, according to Vice President Mike Pence, affirmative action was only a temporary thing. Do you agree? Stay with us. The conversation continues right here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. We've been talking about affirmative action and how former Vice President Mike Pence said in a recent conversation on the CBS's Face the Nation, where he essentially said that affirmative action was a temporary solution and that he was proud and thought it was a great tribute to the court and to the country that it was effectively ended last week by the Supreme Court, and that historic case of affirmative action programs at the University of North Carolina and Harvard. So I wanted to get your take to hear what you have to say. Do you agree with the former vice president that it was a temporary solution and not a permanent solution to try to close the achievement gap, to try to make sure that Black and brown students in particular have access to quality higher education? What's your take on this as we've been talking about it? Post your comments on our YouTube page that we're streaming live right now on YouTube under Roland Martin, and let's continue the conversation. All right, let me go to Rajay. Rajay, you said it was temporary in hopes that systems would change, or should I say mindsets would change. So long as we have discrimination, we'll need affirmative action. Okay, I like the way you're going with that. I like that. As long as we have discrimination, we will have affirmative action. Yeah, that's the point that I don't think the vice president said. Now, I do get the point that if you are opening the doors, and I hope that none of us are looking at this affirmative action idea from this vantage point of as if America is doing us a favor. No, America is not doing us a favor. America owes us, because why? Our people, Black people who have come from Black people who were enslaved over 400 plus years ago in this country, right? The children of those who were enslaved should be given the opportunity to make themselves better, to make their conditions better, to make their lives better, to make sure that they have the same access to information, to education that everyone else has access to. But we know that's not the case. So it's not like, oh, America's doing us a favor. No, America owes it, just like the conversation around reparations. This is not, oh, you just doing something out of your great benevolence. This is justice. This is what is owed to us as a result of that horrific experience of slavery that we are still suffering from to this very day, folks. To this very day, Black people have not been able to, quote unquote, shake off the remnants of what the transatlantic slave trade has done to our minds, our hearts, our spirits, our understanding of ourselves, our relationship to God, all of those things. Those things are still being shaped by that experience of the slave trade. Okay, let's go back to what you got to say. Jeffrey Gaia, you said we're falling for our enemies' talking points. Which came first and is used more, affirmative action or legacy admissions? Hence, George W. Bush didn't get into Yale and Harvard on merit. No, it's nepotism and all of those other things. So I think that to that point, you're making a point, Jeffrey, saying that, look, it has already been happening. It has already been happening. And I agree. This type of stuff has been happening for years on end. Most of your presidents came through a certain path. Even Donald Trump. Donald Trump came through a certain path because of his father's relationships, and he was able to be in those spaces. Now, did they come out to be the most noble men, the most the men with high moral value and moral character? No, not at all. Not at all. Barack Obama, former President Barack Obama, came through a path as well, but he didn't have the same type of what's the word I'm looking for, crew? He didn't have the same type of boost that he got from his family, even though his mother was white. So, you know what I'm saying? It speaks volumes about where we are. All right, let me go back to what you got to say. Who is this? SS, let me make sure I'm seeing. SC Cavi. You said the only way to really change the system is to create one national standard and eliminate all forms of tracking. When grades are weighted, is that not an unfair advantage? The only way to really change the system is to create one national standard and eliminate all forms of tracking. When grades are weighted, is that not an unfair advantage? I don't think it is. I mean, grades are based upon one's ability to do the work, one's ability to process the information, one's ability. So are we saying, let me make sure I'm understanding you this on SC Cavi, that are you saying that grades should not be, the emphasis on grades should not be as great as it currently is right now? I just want to get some clarity about your statement. I think I understand it, but I want to definitely get some clarity. Patrick Cunningham, you checked in and said Asian students got discriminated against for years. What happened to working hard and being rewarded for the merits of your character and not the color of your skin? I mean, that's all well and good. Here, let's keep it real. Who made skin color a big deal? Was it black people or white people? I'll wait. I mean, because I want us to keep us understanding that. Who made skin color a thing? If you talk to black people today, even under all of the history, on all of the things that we have gone through, who made skin color a major problem? Was that black people or white people? I'm waiting for y'all. Crew, just let me know. I'm gonna just throw this question out there. This ain't racism. This is nothing about no hatred. And I'm talking about let's deal with the issue right here in hand. Racism happened because there is a warped, distorted, poisonous thinking called white supremacy, where one group of people think that they're more supreme and more intelligent and better than another group of people. But how did that happen? Come on, man, we got to deal with this. We really got to deal with this. We got to deal with this. Asian students suffer from the same thing. There are some Asian students who, when they come, whether they're born in this country or have immigrated to this country, they know that the best path to social, economic, and upward mobility is to fall in line with the pathway of white students. They know that. They know that. And they come to the country looking to expand. Some of them go back home. across the waters and use that skill set and that knowledge, or some of them start to really set up a whole life here. If you go to some of your major cities, whether you're from Korea, whether you're from Japan, or whatever part of Asia you may be seeing, there is a print here in Los Angeles. There is Koreatown, right? There's a print of who you are, where you come from, of your history, your heritage, and everything. You have a little small section of the city that you can say, oh, this is Koreatown. This is where my people go to bank. And I mean, here in Los Angeles, K-Town, you have banks, you have daycare centers, you have supermarkets, you have everything you need to to be in a growing community. That's what we see. So Asian students, yes, they get a leg up because of the numbers, and they get a leg up because of the time that we live in it, but at the same time, they did not endure the same level of systemic oppression that Black people have suffered from. All right, let's go back to you folks. As we look at this, I'm getting so many of your comments, and I truly appreciate it. You don't like my music. My guy, you checked in and said higher education is how we interrupt intergenerational poverty. That's why it should be tuition free. Lord, I wish you were right. You don't like my music. Gosh, I wish you were right. You also posted the number one determinant of whether you go to college is whether your parents went. Poverty is passed down generationally. Yeah. Unfortunately, we're seeing more and more of that. We're seeing a lot more of that. And that's why when we have this conversation, we can't just think about, well, what has happened in the past. We can't even think about where we are presently. We have to think about the implications of this decision, the implications of this system, the implications of our condition moving forward, because do you want to burden another generation with the same nonsense, with this same mess? Do you want to pass on poverty from one generation to the next? And unfortunately, that's what Black folks, we have been forced to do, to pass this on. Some of us may have grandparents that never even completed high school, or they may have dropped out of high school at a very young age, and they had to kind of work and everything, or they never seen the inside of a college, right? And then when our parents came into existence, that our parents was the first generation college student, right? And then we had to start a new precedent. But then some of our parents may have never finished college. And so we became the first generation college students. You see what I'm saying? But you're passing this on and on generationally. Great point. Great point. You don't like my music. Sean Ryan, you said that happens all over the world through our history. People think they are more supreme from another people. It's just not whites. I'm assuming that's what you wanted to say, Sean. No, it happens, and you're absolutely right. But at some point, it has to end. We share this space called Earth with everyone, right? And so we're at a point now. We can't just say, well, we're gonna just sing a song and hope and wish that things will change. You got the poison of white supremacy, and I just want to make this point, and then we got to take another pause. But the poison of white supremacy runs so deep. It runs so deep in this country that you really have to cleanse all of us, Black, white, Asian, Latino, Native American. All of us have to be cleansed of its remnants. It hasn't been fully eliminated yet. It has to, the thinking, and that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the thinking. What do you do? How do you bring a people who have always been taught since they've been here on these shores that they are inferior, they are less than, they are not worthy, they are not human? How do you, that doesn't happen overnight, the way they have to grow into a different understanding of who they are and what and their value, and determine, you know, what their future is. They have to grow into that, but it has to take time. There's a process. Y'all remember last week I had a sister on, she said freedom comes in steps. Well, that's the case. Coming into a better understanding and enlightenment takes steps, folks. It does not happen overnight. So it is absolutely important that we have this conversation. Just like we talked about the U.S. presidents and everybody having connections to ancestors that held slaves or who enslaved Black people. We got to deal with this because this affirmative action situation comes right out of that you think you're better, that you should have more access, that, okay, we'll give you a little extra boost here and there. Okay, after 20 years, now think about this, after 20 years of getting a little boost, we're like, all right, cut it off. You guys should be good now. But not compared to the over 400 plus years that it took to break us down to get us to this point. And then you don't offer nothing to deal with the roadblocks that you're constantly putting in front of us and constantly put in front of young people that come out of these marginalized and disenfranchised people and communities. Something has to change. And it may not be affirmative action. At this point, we got to redirect our strategy. What's going to be the game plan moving forward? Since affirmative action has been struck down, then what's the next step for college admissions? We have to figure that out, folks. Look, I got to take another pause when we come forward. Let's switch gears. We're going to talk about health and wellness. We're going to be checking in with Dr. Bridget, MD, for this week's Reclaim Your Wellness segment. And she got something very interesting to talk about. Lab-grown meat. Does that sound delicious? We'll see. Stay tuned. That discussion is up next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punching!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning into today's show. Man, oh man, we have been having some great conversations. And more importantly, folks, I appreciate all of you for joining us in the chat as we're streaming live right now on YouTube under Roland Martin. Just go to YouTube right now, see us stream live. That's where the chat for the Culture Crew is happening, a robust conversation about the discussions. This is the only show, folks, that I'm telling you that we bring your comments to the forefront of the conversation, where you can be a part of the discussion like no other show on any other digital platform, digital space. So that's the beauty of the culture here, that I really want to hear from you. We talk to so many talking heads sometimes that it kind of gets in the way of what you're actually thinking, what you're seeing, and your experience. So your voice, your words, your comments, your questions matter the most. So join us in the Culture Crew as we're chatting right now on YouTube. We're streaming on blackstarnetwork.com. And of course, we're streaming on Amazon News if you are looking at us through Roku TV. All right, folks, let's jump back into the show. It is Monday. And of course, every Monday, we got to just do a wellness check to see where we are as we coming out of the weekend and got all these other things happening. So today, we got another great conversation lined up for you for your Reclaim Your Wellness segment with Dr. Bridget, MD. All right, good afternoon, Doc. How are you?
Good.
You're looking fantastic, glowing and stuff.
Yeah, a little Florida weather doesn't hurt anybody. So yeah.
That's what it is. First and foremost, we should rename this segment to see to where is Dr. Bridget?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
You all over the country, Doc. You be all over the country.
A little bit. But it's good to be on here with you. Always great to talk to you.
Absolutely. All right, Doc. I've been waiting on this conversation. I'm trying to figure this thing out. All right, can I just lay out the base of it?
Come on.
All right. So Doc brought it to my attention, y'all, that she's seeing something that's happening in the health food space that is coming out of the laboratory. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna just say this one more time. We're talking about health food that's coming out the lab. Okay, it's called lab-grown meat, folks. And it has been officially given the go-ahead to be sold to the American public. Take a look at this. This is coming from CNN, man. And Doc, I'm
trying to be open-minded. I'm really trying over here.
I'm trying. Look, you're talking to one. I was a vegetarian for 20 years. I went vegan for 2.5 years, about 2 years. I went back to eating meat, but I was just like, I don't know. All right, here's the thing with CNN. There are two companies, crew, that are really on the forefront of this new phenomenon of lab-grown meat. One of them is Good Meat, which is owned by plant-based egg substitute maker Eat Just. They said that production is starting immediately on this new form of meat. It's cultivated or lab-grown meat is grown in a giant vat, much like what you would find at a beer brewery. Now, Good Meat, along with another company called Upside, said they had received approvals for labels for its product from the USDA. In March, Good Meat said it had received a so-called no questions letter from the FDA. That letter states that the administration is satisfied that the product is safe to sell in the United States. The FDA issued a similar letter to Upside Foods in November. Good Meat, which has been selling its products in Singapore, advertises its meat as, quote, meat without slaughter, a more humane approach to eating meat. Supporters hope that cultured meat will help fight climate change by reducing the need for traditional animal agriculture, which emits greenhouse gases.
Yes.
All right, so Doc, you got to talk to me here. What is this really about? Meat coming from a lab and it's supposed to be better and healthier for you? Is that what I'm hearing correctly?
You know, I think they're looking at it from a couple different points of view. And if we're lucky here, I'm hoping to bring in a couple people. So if they are connecting, they're both kind of in between things. So if they're connecting, we'll bring them up. But what we're really talking about is, so I think people need to wrap their brain around this. We're not talking about plant-based meat. We're not talking about slaughtered meat from an animal. We're talking about getting cells, putting them into a vat, growing muscle in a lab, in a beer vat, basically. And that is the meat that it is real meat, but it is not coming directly from an animal. They're saying that it's better for the environment, that it will have less antibiotics in it, because that's a big problem with what we're eating now, right? That when we're eating meat from animals, it's just soaked and covered in so many antibiotics, because to be totally honest, E. coli is coming from the feces from the animal. If we ingest that, we get sick. So what do? We just cover the meat with antibiotics so we're not getting sick, whatever that may mean. And so they're saying that this might be a better option, but it's a hard thing to wrap your brain around, if you ask me. I
would say,
I don't know if, just from a personal point of view, I don't know if I want some sci-fi laboratory scientific animal like I would just I already eat very little meat. I would just give it up and call it the day and just eat plants. Honestly, I don't know if I would want to do that.
Well, I think, and that is my question. That it is. There was always this debate. I remember being a vegetarian and as a vegan, it always comes up this debate. It's like, if you decide to go plant-based, if you decide to become a vegetarian or vegan, then you're essentially saying that you don't want meat at all at any point, right?
This is not for the vegetarian. This is not for, so that's why I'm saying take a minute to really wrap your brain around. This is not an alternative for, well, okay, I guess it means it depends on why you're choosing not to eat meat. If you have an issue with the slaughtering of animals, but you still want animal product, then I guess you would do this. If you have a problem just eating flesh, then this probably isn't for you any more than an animal product was. Okay, so that's probably the distinction. Okay, some people just don't like the idea of how destructive and ugly the slaughtering of animals actually is, so that they choose not to eat meat because of that. Other people don't want to eat flesh. And so I guess depending on where you fall into that, some people don't eat meat because it just feels better not to eat meat, so this isn't going to be for you either. Will it taste the same? Who knows? The cost that's going to be really, really questionable. The first hamburger that they made maybe a decade ago was about $300,000 to produce. I think they got it down to $50, and they're trying to get the cost down more. But I went to the movies with my daughter last night. I had Impossible chicken nuggets. You cannot tell me that wasn't meat. And to be honest, a lot of vegetarians and vegans don't really eat even fake meat, meaning they don't even want to simulate meat. They want to eat plant-like products.
Right.
You know what I mean? They don't need to eat something that tastes like meat at all. So there's a segment of the population that this is going to be attractive to. I think there's a segment of the country, if we're just talking about Americans, that this will be attractive to, because right now this is all happening out in California. I'm very interested in, even in the chat, depending on where you are in the country, how do you think this will go over in your neck of the woods?
Oh my God.
Go over, because I'll tell you, in Ohio, in Michigan,
I'm thinking about, maybe not. It's not going to go over in Ohio, Michigan. Let's go to the parts where most of our people are, which are in the southern parts of the country, right?
Okay, yeah.
Texas, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, Georgia. Are y'all taking home? Are y'all thinking about lab-grown meat? Now, I'm in California. Of course, California has a lot of different diets. That's only in certain parts of California. That's not mean that all of California is like this, folks. That's what I've learned. That you know, you got Southern California, Central California, and Northern California. So they're all different types of culture and diets. So it depends on where you are, right? My question, I think, to your point, and then we got to take a quick pause, but my point is looking at all of the whole thing. The idea that your food is not going to be coming from the ground. It's not going to be coming from the soil. It's going to be coming from a vat. It's going to be coming from a lab. And I don't know if that's going to play out. I know you got a couple of guests that we're going to bring in on this. So we're going to take a quick pause. When we come forward, folks, more conversation with our resident doctor, family physician, Dr. Bridget, MD. As we have this week's Reclaim Your Wellness segment, we're talking about lab-grown meat now being cleared for sale in the United States. What's your take? Join us in the conversation. Post your thoughts on YouTube under Roland Martin's page. And stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Culture here on the Black Star Network. We are in the conversation with Dr. Bridget, MD, for this week's Reclaim Your Wellness conversation, our segment that we have with the good doctor each Monday here on the Culture. And the doctor did not disappoint with this conversation about lab-grown meat being cleared for sale in the United States. Dr. Bridget, first and foremost, Doc, I got to say, I love the crew because they bring up some very, very valid questions to the conversation.
Yes.
Let me just throw this out there because I know you got a special guest that you want to join us. Real Brooklyn said, my question is, if they are growing meat and telling us it's meat, what else can they grow and tell us it's something we think it is?
Exactly. The labeling is going to be really, really important here. Ooh. And I definitely want to, when we bring up Brianna, who's a certified food scientist, I would love to ask her that because we're talking about at the very beginning of this concept, but think about 10 years, 15, 20 years, will we know the difference? Will we be able to identify the difference? And how will we feel about it then? I don't know. I'm trying to be open-minded. Innovation is a part of who we are as humans. But it's a hard one for me to wrap my brain around. So I'm not the
one.
All right,
let's bring in the food scientists.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So who we got joining us today here, Dr. Bridget?
Absolutely. So we have Brianna Neff, who's a certified food scientist, specializing in plant-based functional product development, and is the owner of Brelexi, a line of functional, ready-to-mix nano cannabis-infused drinks. You know, I always got to bring my cannabis people with me.
Always, you got to do it for the cannabis. You got to do it for the
always
cause.
the best and most creative. And we have Chef James Atkins, who's food artist, master chef, sous chef, out of NYC. Both of them are from New York, actually, so they can bring a different perspective on this. But I'm very interested in, and maybe we can start with Rihanna about this whole idea. And what do you think about it? And what do you think the labeling is going to show?
Yeah, I was gonna just ask on that or talk about that point. Myself was the labeling. I was doing a lot of research and I can't seem to find exactly what they're referencing on the, USDA approved of their most recent labels, and the FDA has a no statement letter. So I kind of wanted to see what that is, but I guess they're not showing that to consumers as of yet. So I'm really, very interested to see what it is, because if you compare to, I know this is different, this is cell cultured meat, but if you, see the difference of, animal produced meat versus the, the vegan meat replacements out there, you do see a significant difference in their macrobiology and their macronutrients that they're giving to the people, and it's not that much beneficial compared to animal based. So I'm really curious just to see that difference there, and the fact that they're not highlighting it right now and kind of talking about it really makes me think that it's not anything better or anything more than what we're getting from animal-based sources. So I know that a main thing about animal-based sources is that it provides a lot of great protein for you. So I'm assuming that potentially that source of nutrient isn't as good as they're wanting it to be. That's why they're not really out forthly showing us all of the labels right now.
I mean, we're talking about meat that's not fed. We're talking about meat that is grown. And so what we're getting can't exactly ever be the same. And so I kind of turn over to Chef James, and how do you think, how are you receiving this, and how do you think your client base is going to receive this?
So to be honest with you, I think that this is a different conversation. I think the fact that we're still calling it meat is the problem that we're having with this. I think that if you look around at the world, you see the degradation of the world, you see all the issues that's happening. I think that we're trying to preserve the world a little bit by bit by bit. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm just playing devil's advocate, because to be honest with you, I also have an issue or find it questionable the impossibles and those concepts of TVP, the textured vegetable protein, so on and so forth. But if it's providing substantial nutrients that sustains life, same thing as a protein drink, as Gatorades with electrolytes. I think if we look at it both ways, right? So now we're providing our body with nutrients that's necessary, right? I think the thought of us recreating proteins or consumables in a lab is what's the questionable part, right? But we don't question it when it comes to antibiotics. We don't question it to all the nutritional facts on labels. Okay. I think this is just a correlation between whether or not this is actually, cultured cellular protein, right? But when we were watching Star Trek and then food was coming out of a replicator, everybody thought that was cool and said that was going to be the future. I think this is just us taking steps towards the next generation.
Hey, Chef, though. Hey, let me throw that jump in here. Chef, when we were watching Star Trek, we thought it was cool because we never think that we would be faced and confronted with that reality. Like, look at that meat.
Yes. Yeah. No, honest to God, right? Like there are plenty of people in the chat right now that I know are those Star Trek, Star Wars fans, loved every second of it, been trying to live that life and waiting for it. And now it is here. Now it is here. Now what do you have to say about it, right?
Well, let me just say this. If we throw this out there, and I'm glad, and I'm so grateful, Dr. Bridget, you brought these two dynamic folks onto the show, because I think it speaks volume. I want to know, who is this targeted to? Okay, if this is not for vegans and vegetarians, right? Because a vegan saying, oh, I got a taste for some meat, or a vegetarian saying it. Is this for individuals who eat meat already and are looking for a healthier, more quote unquote cleaner alternative? Is that the target for this product? And I guess
I can hop in there.
Brianna,
I
let me
can
start
hop
with
in
you on
there.
that. Yeah, let me start with you on that.
That is a great question. I'm having the same question myself. Is exactly what what market and what audience is this kind of targeted for? Is it for creating in a safer condition, as Dr. Bridget was mentioning before, where you don't have to have all of these antibiotics and the preservatives placed there to prevent the animal from getting sick while it's being cultivated? That is a huge thing to think about. And if that's the purpose, then I think that is really, really smart. But now the question is, what is the what's the cost, and what's the cost difference, and is it approachable for most humans and most different societies in America right now, or is it mostly for the the dining occasion and the restaurant occasion, which I think was paired with this announcement of Good Food, was that they're going to put it on a restaurant with Jose Andres and really try to make it palpable for the for the consumer. But does that mean that we can buy it in a grocery store at the same price as normal food, when that's already kind of an issue? So I think that exactly the question. Is it for the consumer that is more, climate focused and don't want to, make their dollars go towards something that they don't agree with and is increasing greenhouse emissions? Or is it something that, the everyday consumer can afford? I'm not sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I know, Brianna, and then Dr. Bridget, I'm going to throw it back to you, but I know that in both Jewish faith and in Islam, there's a term called halal, where if an animal is killed, it is not killed in a state of fear. It's not killed in a state of panic. And that, because that energy, if you're killing an animal in fear and panic, you will start to consume that energy. There are a lot of folks in both of those communities who's like, no, I want my meat to be at peace when they are being killed. So I'm wondering, as a food scientist, is that a consideration too, Brianna, that maybe people are thinking, well, let me create an animal where that doesn't become an issue.
But it's not an animal. It's not an animal. Like, it's not an issue.
That's true. It's not an animal. But you know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? But yeah, you're absolutely right. But I mean, I think people want to, I'm wondering if people are asking for this alternative, or is this just a money grab situation by Good Food and Upside Foods?
Yeah. Because if people aren't asking
right now,
you
go ahead, Brianna. Then I want to get you, Jeff. I want to get you right after Brianna.
Yeah, just quickly, I just want to say, if the intention for the consumers is to not eat animal and to not eat those types of have that type of consumption go into their body, then I don't think that then they wouldn't be wanting to have a product such as this. So that is exactly to Dr. Bridget's point, is who and who exactly is this targeted towards, and is it is it a money thing, or is it mostly towards just to help the climate overall?
Chef
James.
Well, I don't expect to see this in any of my restaurants, and I can definitely tell you that none of my clients will be eating this if I have anything to say about it. As long as there's livestock on this earth, okay? All right, and trust me, I'm a humanitarian. I'm an advocate of the animals, but until there is proper lab testing, until there is enough market research, until we actually see that this is actually a benefit, there is no reason for me to actually bring this into any of my clients' homes. I just don't see that. But once again, I do think that we're missing the point, is that there are a lot of people, there are a lot of food-starved nations, okay? There are a lot of malnourished nations. And now, although this may not be our specific approach, all right, but, don't forget, there's also cultures that eat insects and cultures that don't. Whatever we need to consume in order to sustain life, okay, and to assist the impoverished nations, we should consider, right, at the very least. So, I mean, because then that's saying that, we don't care if people go hungry because this is weird, or different or new. I think that, with technology, with innovation, we need to have an open-mindedness. And if this does save a percentage of society, then it should be of beneficial use.
I love that. I love that. So you're both business people, and Chef James, you mentioned that this is not something that your clientele or this would never be in one of your kitchens. But my question for you is that, Bill Gates and Richard Branson are highly involved in this and investing incredibly into this area. And so though this might not show up in your kitchen, is this something that you would invest in?
So, I mean, I would definitely invest in it because I definitely think that this is important towards, saving society. But once again, I also would invest in tabloids because I know it's a well-read publication, right? Like, just because I invest in it doesn't mean that I need to actually consume it or make it part of my life.
No,
I can guarantee you, I doubt Bill Gates is eating it at his dinner table every night. And if he is, I'd love to see it.
And Chef and Brianna and Dr. Bridget, I think that is the problem. That could be a huge problem, especially when you're talking to Black folks who are food starved, living in food deserts, and are suffering from food apartheid. That is a problem. That if people are willing to invest in it, but they're not willing to eat it, then it comes off as a one-sided approach. Or it comes off as being a money grab. It comes off as you introducing a product to a people, but you're not willing to take it in yourself. And when you said Bill Gates does not have the most solid relationship with Black folks in this country. So we, for those who are in the crew that understand, what Bill Gates have also been a part of, that might be a real problem for some of our people to even accept this type of product. Look, I got to take another quick pause, Dr. Bridget, Chef James, Brianna. I want us to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's get some more thoughts from our culture crew because folks are checking in from around the country as they have some very legitimate questions about this lab-grown meat that is up for sale. Folks, join us in the conversation. You can post your thoughts on the YouTube page. Just go under Roland Martin and continue to be a part of the discussion. When we come back, your thoughts up next. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate Black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. We've been having a very, very interesting, timely discussion about food. We've been checking in with our resident family physician, Dr. Bridget, MD, for this week's Family Wellness. where she's brought on two dynamic guests to talk about lab-grown meat that has been officially cleared for sale in the United States. Dr. Bridget, we got so many questions around this whole phenomenon, and I'm so happy to be joined by Chef James and Brianna Neff, a food scientist, to talk to us about this. Can I go to a couple of questions, Doc?
Wait, I want to just one quick thing though, that that all of this kind of hit home for me, and Chef James, that you kind of highlighted. You know, we're talking about food deserts. We're talking about people all around the world that might not have access to food and people starving. We're talking about billionaires that are investing, but probably may or may not be eating it. And the first thing that I went to was the Tuskegee experiment. Well, that we're talking about providing something to people that are unlike the people that are creating this or investing in it, that it's not for them, but they're doing it for other people, and that we end up being the experiment. And that means Black and brown people around the world that might not have access to food. That is a problem. That is a very serious problem if that's the way this goes.
Jeff, can you speak to that, or Brianna, can we speak to that?
So I completely agree, right? But I also think that, right, so now this comes down to a different conversation where I feel that it's time for us as a people to stop waiting for others to feed us, okay? And for us to create innovation, change, development, processes so that we can preserve and protect our culture, okay? Because, I mean, you know, we do have a history of being lab rats, which is quite unfortunate. And it's, you know, it's extremely disappointing. But, you know, I also, if I have my hand out and I'm given something, if it's not something that I want, you know, I had my hand out instead of going out and taking care of it myself. And I think as a people, it's very important for us to actually really start, you know, bringing together, you know, groups like, you know, Brianna, the food scientist, and myself, and coming up with our own solutions.
And so I think Chef and Brianna and Dr. Bridget, that's the place that we have to have. That there has to be like a clearinghouse. I'm not sure if this already exists. So Brianna and Chef Atkins, y'all let me know. But where are the food scientists, the chefs, the culinary cuisine artists, and all of those folks that work in the food industry to look at something like this and say, all right, this might not be the best move for Black people because of where we are with our health and wellness, because of what it has, you know, like you said, Dr. Bridget, what has already transpired over these past 100 years with experiments with food and medicine and everything. Like, are there individuals that we can turn to that can help us to navigate through this? Because look, as much as some of us might say, oh man, this sounds crazy, this sounds wild, a lot of our people are not tuned in, like, into this show or to this platform. They're going, if once this stuff starts hitting the shelves of grocery stores around the country, if it meets a certain price point, if it looks real enough that people are going to say, oh, let me try this out, just like Beyond Meat and Impossible Burgers and all of the other alternative products out there, people are going to start consuming. And then all they have to do is start getting influencers and then vegan and the healthy food space and say, look, I'm eating whatever this new lab meat is. You should be too. It has this benefit and that benefit. There's going to be a whole campaign around this. So is there a group of folks that we can turn to give us some good guidance on something like this?
Farajii, I think that's you. I think that's what we're doing. I think
I think
it's you providing the opportunities. It's us having these conversations and making sure that we're getting it out to other people. And like I said, I don't want to create a narrative that this is horrible. I don't know yet. I know I'm cautious. There might be really great things about this. I don't know. But I walk very gingerly into this area. And then if it does, and my first thought that this was going to be aimed at the very rich, to be totally honest with you. But if it's the opposite, then I am very, very apprehensive about very, very apprehensive of how this might go.
Yeah, and I would say it all just really goes down to how they scale it up, how they do their quality testings, and how they really approve and validate of the final product. I wish that, there was more out there to kind of understand what that looks like now, but I guess it's just a little bit too early to fully understand that until more information is exposed out there. But that's definitely what I'm going to be staying privy to, is exactly what are those, scaling up quality control methods, and what does a final product validations look like? I think those are really important. And once kind of that information's out there, definitely the scientific community will be able to talk amongst it, just as they did kind of with the whole plant-based alternative meat movement as well.
Mm-hmm.
Can I keep it 100 with you,
Yes.
Brianna?
Yes, please.
This is the culture. This is about our culture, right? Can we keep it 100? There are a lot of people. I'm not gonna say a lot. I think there are a number of people within our community that do not trust science, because we just finished seeing what the situation was around the COVID-19 vaccination situation, right? Yeah. So now we're coming into a space where if we're going to rely on quote unquote data and science, but we haven't really fully addressed the pushback that Black folks had around the COVID-19 vaccination, or the whole conversation about science and public health, I think that's going to be a hard sell for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
You're right. You're not wrong. You're definitely not wrong. And that's been a struggle for generations in our community, for sure. I mean, based off of history. So that is definitely a hurdle to come off of. But then that's exactly to Chef Atkins' point is, really, being responsible for your own food source and your own gardens and your own, vegetation and things like that, which I think is also a really great conversation to have, is how to, rely on ourselves in these certain instances as the climate is changing and as the world is changing before us.
Absolutely. All right, Dr. Bridget, do you mind if I take a couple of Culture Crew comments here?
Go ahead.
All right, Sue Knight checked in and said, we should support our Black farmers and grow the natural foods that are good for us. Manufacturing meat in labs cannot be healthy long-term. No way, no how. Janae, you checked in. They said the catch is that it will sell for cheaper, right? Because it's mass-produced. And Dr. Bridget, Brianna, Chef James, we don't even have all of the details to know what the price point will be for a product like this. Is that correct?
Not the final yet. Like I said, it started out at like $300,000, got down to $50 and I'm talking about one hamburger, but they're working diligently to get that price down even further, of course.
Okay. Conscious Thought brought this question. He said, what type of oversight, if any, does this meat, quote unquote, have to go through in order to be certified as edible meat? Is that, Brianna, I'm assuming, is that something that you can speak to?
Yeah, and that's why it definitely, and that's why this is interesting to see, because this is all new. There's nothing defined as a food product that is, coming from a cultured cell source. And so this is going to be a new definition requiring new guidelines and new standards. So it's all, we're about to see and go through the journey together.
That's interesting. That is very interesting. Source of Life Touch, you said, wow, so there are zero ethics in investment. If you wouldn't serve it to your clients or family, why sanction it at all? Not serving it in your restaurants doesn't mean, and I don't see the rest of the comment, but I guess Source of Life Touch was speaking to you, Chef James. Can you speak to that, bro?
100%. So my style of cooking is very healthy and clean. I like to be able to source my product from start to finish. I come from a very different background of cuisine where it's all about, minimal ingredients, minimal byproducts, very clean and organized. Now, that also being said, there's a lot of foods that are in our culture because of systematic issues at that time, right? I'm not going to go into details. Now, which we know are not good for health, all right? We know it's not good for blood pressure, diabetes, heart health, but yet continue to consume it. So what I'm saying, as far as won't be able to serve it to my clients, is because my clients have a very specific protocol of diet that they consume, which we have strayed from. And I think it's important to get back in our community, proper diet plans, proper consumption sizes, and like really understanding how this machine that we live in operates and the best fuel for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, keep in mind that the largest growing number of vegans in this country are Black people. I think with it being about 8% and with the rest of Americans, maybe about 3% are vegan. So we're heading away to hopefully creating a healthier lifestyle, and that we're rejecting some of the things that we've been forced upon us as far as these antibiotics and heavy meats. And I'm hoping that we're taking a turn and taking better control of our diet, as you were saying, Chef James. So as far as how this would fit in, I just imagine we'll be watching this 10 years from now, and who knows what we'll be thinking is what keeps going through my mind. But to be quite honest, if more and more of us are becoming vegans, maybe this is not even something that we'll get involved in at all.
Well, here's the thing too, Dr. Bridget, if you become a vegan, you don't want the meat.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
People often ask me that, like, what's the, and I'm wondering, and I wasn't, too aware about this process, but what was the process, Brianna, around Beyond Meat and the Impossible Meat? Did their rollout look like this?
Yes, there was a lot of education and new experiments that they had to look into and to set new standards for something like this. There wasn't something as complex as their like hemoglobin, plant-based, cell that was replicant of the animal cell until they created it. And so once they did, then they worked really closely with USDA and their other certification organization bodies to thus get to the standards that is acceptable. But again, when something is as new and novel and innovative as this, there's two sides to a coin. And again, it's really good advancements in technology, but then that always comes with, looking at historical data and then just making sure that it is consistent with what you are seeing. My only fear here with anything new that comes into the food system is, again, we love innovation and that's how we steer and bring and drive change to the future. But definitely that also coming with a rigorous testing system and a standard system to really make sure that the quality is up to par and that we're not, giving, consequently just any bad side effects that we didn't foresee in the beginning. If we have that all set and we have those nice protocols in place, I think that there is nothing, harmful that could be happening. But without those standards in place and without us testing it through time, then again, I just take this, with a gingerly approach, as Dr. Bridget was saying.
Absolutely. I know we got to take another quick pause, family. When we come forward, I want us to get some closing remarks around this, because this is very, very interesting. There's still a lot of questions, folks. We want you to join us in the conversation as we've been talking to Dr. Bridget, MD, and her very special guest about lab-grown meat being cleared for sale in the United States. What are your thoughts? What's your take? Join us. You can post your comments on our YouTube chat under Roland Martin's page and be a part of the discussion. Stay with us, folks. A lot more coming at you in the final few minutes of the culture here on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is roland@rolandsmartin.com.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punching!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. We've been having a fascinating conversation about lab-grown meat being cleared for sale, and I've been having this conversation with our resident physician, Dr. Bridget Cole-Williams, MD, for this week's Reclaim Your Wellness segment. And Doc, I just have to say, the guests that you brought on, this whole conversation just rattles me to my core because it leaves me with so many unanswered questions. I'm like, I don't want to fall down into the hole of conspiracy theory, but at the same time, I'm like, what in the world is going on? What is happening here? Like, are we at this point with our food that we're so, are we mad at our food here? Are we just disgruntled with the choices? I mean, the food situation in this country is huge. Well, I live in LA, so this is like considered to be a food capital of the world. But I know that the conversation about food and Black people in this country is an ongoing conversation, and I think that it's now with the rise of veganism, vegetarianism, with the rise of gluten-free eaters, you got lactose intolerant, you got people who are pescatarian. It seems like we're not at peace with our food right now, Doc.
Yeah, I agree. I was going to say, I don't know if we're mad at the food or the food is mad at us. But we're in a place of where change is needed, necessary, whether from a personal point of view or for a global point of view. And that this is the change that, in science fiction, we've been looking for, right? But now that it's here, what do we have to say about it? I feel like I'm going to sit back and watch an episode of The Jetsons and, realize that that's what we always wanted, right? And now it's here, we don't want it. The one thing I will say that if you're curious about how this plays into climate change and what have you, a while back, I watched an episode of Explained on Netflix. It was called The Future of Meat, which it's an older episode, but it really kind of clued me into some of the issues that you might not think about when you're just getting your food from the grocery store, right? So if you want to know more, definitely a great episode to watch.
And Chef James, what's your take on this? I mean, as we kind of close out this part of the conversation, a lot of people are going to be, thinking about this. They're going to be asking some more questions. They may start their research process for this. What do you want us to walk away with having from this conversation, brother?
I think that if people can spend $70 on a plasma or LED TV, we can also start, developing farm concepts with lighting, growing our own vegetables, and actually really starting taking care of our body and not just entertainment. All right. I think that, the shock value of these kind of situations that pop up cause us to think about these things. Whereas, all the doctor's visits, everything that our family members go through should be enough of a testament that we need to start changing our lifestyles first and foremost. I think that if we start focusing on, homegrown farms, start developing food co-ops in our neighborhood, all right, and, realize that we actually don't need meat, we need protein. And you can still season it any way you want to and make it taste delicious, okay? And there's tons of resources all over social media. It's not just all dances. There are chefs out there that are doing healthy food and healthy living.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I appreciate your expertise on this conversation. Brianna, let's talk about where do we go from here? I mean, in terms of navigating the space, especially when it comes to marketing to our people, when it comes to the packaging of our people, when things are homemade, all organic, fresh grown, straight from the source, all of these type of things. This type of stuff can throw people off. This type of stuff can really put us in a place where we may not know exactly what we're consuming. So how do we navigate through this as we move forward in a space where we're looking at a lab-grown meat alternative?
Yeah, I always recommend consumers to read the back of your label. It's really great to see that that's how the consumer and the market is changing. And, you're seeing more natural-based foods and natural-based ingredients are really being highlighted instead of using, like food coloring. Now we have like spinach in there, for example. So that being said, the market is moving that way. And so fortunately enough, we're able to see more of those different, more naturally formulated processed foods are now, introducing into the grocery market more and more, especially post-COVID as well. So I would just definitely recommend, looking into your food sources, really trying to get as least minimally as processed as possible. Now, again, that's hard when these, more naturally produced foods that are from farms are more expensive than the ones that you see in the grocery stores. But that being said, because of the consumers like ourselves are demanding for more upfront sources of ingredients that they understand on their labels, then thus the large CPG companies are then having to produce it and to create it for consumer demand. And so then now that's why we're seeing more naturally sourced ingredients and clean label ingredients in the food in the grocery store. So I would just recommend to continue on that path and to really scrutinize your label, and also just to look into, more cleaner sources of food if you can.
Oh, absolutely. Dr. Bridget, this is fascinating. I'm blown away right now. I'm blown away. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. I think it leaves us with so much to think about. Yeah. And like you said, even with so much colon cancer that affects our community, and that if we had healthier diets, there's a certain amount of that we could avoid. So that's one thing. The other thing is that with all of us being in some aspect of the plant-based industry, that I know a lot of people that spend a lot of money growing cannabis plants in their closet and don't have a tomato plant. You know what I'm saying? And so if we're willing to buy the lamps and risk, in some places it's legal, in some places it's not, if you're willing to go all out to have a cannabis plant in your closet, you spend a lot of money sometimes making sure that it's grown in the most, natural, pesticide-free way. Throw some collard greens in there. Throw some other plants in there, and think about, if you're about plant medicine, then you should be growing a little bit more than weed.
You're trying to get up into somebody's business model now, Doc.
I'm trying to get in people's closet right now. So go figure.
All right, very quickly, we got like a minute left, Doc. Yes. And to Brianna and to Chef James, what resources would y'all recommend for our people to check out? Because I know that there's going to be a great interest in not just in this piece of lab-grown meats, but just in general, like just to see this whole process. Are there some places that we can go to have some solid information, get a better understanding of where the food industry is going from this point forward?
Go ahead, Chef James, go ahead.
So I would definitely say, look up chefs that are doing healthy concepts, healthy meal preps, and recipes, and even just these home cooking magazines. There's some really great advocates out there that are doing some really amazing fun things with simple food.
Sounds good. Brianna, what about you?
I'm going to come in with a nerdy approach and say follow, journals such as like the Institute of Food Technologists and the Journal of Food Science as well. They have really riveting studies of new things just like this. And so that helps me keep myself privy to all of the different food safety standards that are now set. But definitely that would have a resource of exactly where this is going and what the landscape could look like in the future.
Sounds awesome. Institute of Food Technology. I love it. Dr. Bridget, you got the final word. What's your take?
I definitely say create accountability, that it doesn't take a lot to get started in the space. And you heard, great resources from these two experts, but what it takes is consistency. And so if you're interested in creating a new lifestyle for yourself, then not only find the resources, but find a group of people or someone that can kind of keep you on track so that you're not falling down, a slippery slope and going right back to, because we eat processed foods every day, in the middle of the grocery store, right? And so people that can help keep you on track and making good choices, know your health condition so that you know what you need to be looking at, work with herbalists and find support.
There it is. Dr. Bridget, MD, Brianna Neft, and and Chef James Atkins, thank you all for being a part of this conversation. I know a lot of people have truly enjoyed the discussion, and I'm just so grateful that the three of you decided to have this conversation on this show on our platform of the Black Star Network. Thank you so much, and I'd love to bring you all back on very, very soon. Of course, Doc, we'll see you next week, God willing.
Absolutely. And I'll be on Instagram Live tonight at 5:30.
There it is, after chat, talking about this some more, folks. Make sure y'all follow Dr. Bridget on all social media platforms, on Instagram page, and then other social media for all that latest information. Folks, we got to take a final pause. When we come back, give you an update on trends, posts, and doing the most. Stay with us. It's The Culture on the Black Star Network.
We feel the hidden impacts of climate change that land harder in Black, Brown, and Native communities.
Not many people talk about it because they clearly don't know our lives. But with President Biden's landmark infrastructure and climate plans, our issues are finally seen.
Removing lead pipes means we know our water is safe. Cutting carbon pollution helps our kids breathe easier. 1.5 million new jobs means stable work in communities. The impact we need
right now.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
All right, folks, very quickly for Trends Post and doing the most. If you have not heard, Tyler Perry has become a man that will help and save our seniors. He posted a video of a 93-year-old black homemaker who is being put under pressure to move out of her home for a major development. And this is something that has gotten to Tyler Perry, and he has decided to pledge his support for keeping our 93-year-old grandmother in her home. Definitely check out his Instagram post where he talks about the story of, let me make sure I get her name correctly here. He talks about her story, our 93-year-old homeowner who has been trying to get pushed out. Miss Josephine Wright, she's refusing to leave her South Carolina home, which has been in her family since the Civil War. Tyler Perry said, Miss Wright, we are going to support you. Tell us whatever you need. If you did not know, Tyler Perry has always come to the support and to the rescue of our seniors. He actually donated $750,000 in February to help prevent the displacement of low-income seniors in Atlanta. And so he is doing his part to make sure that those who have laid the groundwork for us is taken care of. So big shout out to Tyler Perry. Definitely check him out on his IG page about the story of Miss Josephine Wright. Folks, that's going to do it for us. I thank each and every one of you. I thank Dr. Bridget. I thank Chef James Atkin. And I thank Brianna Neff for being a part of the conversation crew. Thank you so much. Do your due diligence. Show your support for Black Star Network. Go to our website today at blackstarnetwork.com, blackstarnetwork.com. And also make sure you download the app for free. Give your money to help us to continue to fuel this movement on this platform, because your dollars, your cents makes all the difference in the world. And make sure that you continue to tell your family and friends about us, because that helps us a lot to get the word out there about this Black-owned media platform. So go to blackstarnetwork.com. Follow us on social media. Also follow me on social media at The Real Farajii on Instagram and at Farajii on Twitter. And I would love to connect with you. Stay tuned. Up next at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is Roland Martin Unfiltered. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we'll see each other on Wednesday. I hope and pray that you have a safe holiday, spending with your time with your family and friends, and get to know a little bit of that Black history behind 4th of July as well. But God willing, we'll reconnect on Wednesday for another exciting edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Peace.